to Garment Talks, the podcast that unravels garment production one stitch at a time. I'm your host, Moreni Keji Edwadetu, a garment production consultant and the founder of Me Consult, an apparel production planning and management company. Through this platform, we seek to bring voices from across the fashion production industry to share their insights, experiences, and strategies that can build the industry. On this first episode, I have with me Omobolanle Adeosun, a fashion creative with over 8 years of industry experience, who specializes in technical product development and sustainability. Hi, Bolanle. It's good to have you here.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for
I
honoring
feel like this
my
conversation is long overdue.
I know, right? So just a quick recap on your journey so far. I want you to just take us through your journey and what you do within the industry.
Okay, like you already said, I'm a technical product developer or digital product creator, and I would say my theme in the industry is to create sustainable products. So, I mean, we know that in the industry there's a lot of waste. Everyone is churning out products. Even from product development, there are a lot of samples, and so there's a lot of waste in the industry. And so that's like it's a really big thing for me. People are not just making what they need; they're only making sometimes what they want. So we need to just find a balance in the industry. And a bit about my journey. I would say that I started in the industry just wanting to have clothes to wear, period. I think I remember that it was when I was in school, in the university, where I was coming into a space where I wanted to have Ankara dresses. And I was looking out for tailors that could make simple, nice fitting. I mean, when I say simple, I mean just a knee length down with a short sleeve. Yeah. And it was the most difficult thing. Something was always off. Either the finishing was nothing to write home about, or the fit was just wrong. So I was like, okay, I had just finished school. Maybe I should just learn how to make my own clothes. So I started to learn. I learned with some fabulous Senegalese and Cote d'Ivoire tailors, and they taught me with the freehand method. When I finished that and I finished my service here, I started to learn how to make patterns. I mean, it was like a whole new world was opened up to me. And so I started to learn how to make patterns, this plus this would give you this. And these were much more accurate. And I'm like, fantastic.
Did you learn on your own? Or
no, I had someone teach me. I mean, I had someone teach me. I did have some books as well. But I had someone guide me through the process. So when I was done with that, that was somewhere around maybe 2016. And I started to make some clothes for myself, make my family, friends, make a few things for some people. I earned some little money here and there. Along the while, I got into the 20 Relu program, and I was given that capital fund to start my business. But then COVID came and changed the picture. I mean, I had already sort of invested some money into my business, but COVID came and changed the conversation, and so people weren't going for parties anymore. People were not necessarily wearing anything but loungewear and home clothes, and so I started to think about what the future of fashion was going to be, so that I could position myself to be future forward and to always battle the conversation no matter what. And so I got into the digital space because then that took over. I'm sure everyone remember the Hanifa collection and how it just blew the internet.
I do remember that. Yeah.
And I was like, this is a possibility. So how can I get into things like this? And that was where I started. I started to learn Adobe Illustrator. That I did on my own because there weren't too many tutorials on YouTube or even really anywhere that I could use. So I started to learn to use Adobe Illustrator on my own. I was able to create my portfolio, and along the line, I got the opportunity to work with the brand, and I was able to do this in the one department of product development. And I'm like, it's possible to just focus on one thing, and that brings me to, why does everybody want to have their own thing?
Fashion brand.
Everybody wants to have their own fashion brand. You're great at marketing, but you want to have a fashion brand. You're great at making patterns, but you want to have a fashion brand. You're great at production, but you want to have... We can literally come together with our skills and put out a brand that puts Africa on the map in a
Exactly.
different light, because you have different individuals with great discipline, with great expertise in their discipline, and we can collaborate and put out, fantastic products. Anyway, so so that, I would say, is just a brief summary of how
How
I
you got
come into
into.
this space. And so, I mean, it's been one thing after the other. I also got to learn about different softwares, Clove, Browseware, that just help to physically present samples without even putting pen to paper to start, or pen to paper, or pen to fabric, or anything. Yeah, so that cuts out a
that
lot
way,
of,
yeah,
yes,
wastage, yeah,
waste.
cutting out wastage, yeah. Okay, that's great. It's interesting that you spoke to, how you started your journey, how it
Mhm.
started from just being passionate enough to want to wear something decent, a basic outfit that would just look good, good finishing, and all that. And interestingly, I have a similar story, of how I journeyed into the fashion industry. And although it started off as wanting to have my own fashion brand, which I still do, but at some point I realized that I was more interested in a particular aspect of the fashion industry, which is the garment production. Which brings me to this next question that I would like to ask. So, how do you think that, or how let me rephrase it. What you do currently,
Yeah.
how has it impacted the fashion industry locally in Nigeria? I want you to speak to that, and then I also want you to speak to how it has also impacted the industry in the Western world. I know that there are a lot of things that the Nigerian fashion industry is sort of playing catch up on currently, but it's also important to be able to give a good comparison so that people know that, okay, this is what or this is what can be achieved if we do things differently, and then they start to see how possible it is to adopt some of these processes. So maybe you can just speak a little
I will
about
start by saying that we there's still a lot of traditional methods that go into product development. So we're not saying, oh, we don't want to draft patterns or anything. There is still that, at least for the space that we are in right now, because a lot of these digital solutions are very capital intensive. So there is a merge between the two worlds, the traditional world and the digital world. So right now we do both, basically. So you're able to take on some level of digital technology and use that to improve your product development process. Now, product development is much more than just making the patterns. It's sampling, it's prototyping, it's seeing what works best, how to achieve the design with as little cost as possible, what production methods are best, source, fabric sourcing, product life cycle, basically the full works of the product. So in the industry right now, we have made tangible improvements in the industry, but there's still a ways to go. Not everybody has a product developer in their company that owns a fashion brand. But it's important, because if your products don't go through sampling and it's just you make one cloth and then you do your shoot in it and then that's it, you wouldn't know that it could be better. You might want to change them, and then every single person who orders after that, you're basically just updating. I mean, it's quite important to always sample things and go through. But the idea of using digital solutions is to be able to cut down the amount of sampling and even the time that it would take. In the international space, um, like you said, they've definitely gone way ahead of us, and we have a more robust team of product developers that are working on products. I want to chip in here the time factor. The time factor, not just for product development, but even for the fashion industry in general. We're always against time. So you're trying to put out a collection, or you're trying to do it as fast as possible. Even as a product developer, you have limited time to work on a collection. But it's very, very important to proactively think, and that, I would think, is a very big skill of a product developer, technical or traditional. You have to be able to proactively think about what needs to be thought of. What fabric are we trying to use? What is the what is the value of the product? Is this product supposed to be worn during summer, or is it supposed to be worn during a cold season or weather? And then you can be able to advise on the kind of fabrics that you need to be able to make these products. So on the international scene, we have the spring, summer, and the winter, autumn. Those things already go into their consideration in product development, and bringing it back to the local space now. We don't necessarily have like winter or anything. So bringing it back home, the ability to forecast what is needed per time will then help product developers and designers be able to put out collections way ahead of time. So you want to, maybe launch something for summer. You should be thinking about it the December of the past year, and so you can have enough time to sample, think through, and see what works best. So yeah, I just wanted to chip in that time, that patience and time bit into the conversation.
Thank you so much. Interestingly, when I speak to people about garment production, because I like to enlighten people about the entire production cycle, and I try to highlight the three main stages of production, the entire cycle: the pre-production, the production stage, and then the post-production. It's interesting that a whole lot needs to actually go into the pre-production that many people miss out on. Ideally, I would say that at least you need 6 months, to start the entire
Let me just
process
laugh
of concept.
at this point.
At least, where you're thinking of the concepts, trying to develop the product, prototyping, and all those things. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, we don't have that culture of,
taking
slow fashion in that sense, where you are taking the pain to go through all the processes, the stages. And what you end up having is because, and I think it's also because there's this quick, even for the consumers, which does not necessarily support sustainability. It does not support the practices of what we're trying to build now, like the sustainable practices and all that, where people just want a quick outfit to wear for a party, and all this. I know it's a conversation that we are not necessarily going towards today.
Fast fashion.
Fast fashion. And all that. Well, I know that that's the culture here in Nigeria. So in trying to bring people on board, or to help people see that there are things that you need to put in place when it comes to production, like the pre-production, the development of your products rather, and all those things. It's going to take a while before people really buy into it, and that's why I wanted you to sort of explain further on the benefits, how it would help. So apart from wastage, apart from it helping to save time, save cost on paper, things like that, resources. What are the other things that you think digital product development and technical product development can help with, in the fashion industry, just to improve our processes?
I have, as you were speaking right now, I had like a completely off tangent thought pattern about it, and it's in the way that you can really ground yourself in the ethos of your brand by going through digital product creation or technical, just taking your time to do your product development, because then you are basically marinating in the idea or the product that you are trying to put out. So you're not, okay, this is what's hot and spicy, let me just drop it. If I don't drop it quickly, next month it might be off the market. But you are taking your time. I think there was a designer I read up recently, and she literally skipped a fashion show. Because did you hear about it? She skipped a fashion week, like a year, just so that she can spend more time to develop her collection. And of course, it was on the headlines because it was a great show that she put up eventually. So she's taking her time to really stew and marinate in her product and the idea and the concept of what she's trying to put out. So when you take your time, let's say, you would see on maybe more on international brands, maybe you just look at their board. So you see the technical designs. You can see one design, but in 5 different, maybe with 5 different pictures. So let's say it's a t-shirt. You might see one t-shirt that has a slightly longer sleeve, one that is maybe at the elbow, one that is shorter, But at the end of the day, they're probably going to be like maybe one or two of them. But they're trying to
Different
picture the different
variations,
possibilities of what they want to.
Yeah.
They're studying the market, they're carrying out surveys, they're looking at what people are buying, the direction things are going, the forecasting of everything. You can't do that in 1 month. I mean, all of that is even before you even start even making patterns or anything.
At all, yeah.
So it would help you to really take your time to develop something that when you put it out, they will not thought has gone into it.
Yeah.
But there's also definitely helping the waste, and it will also even help you drive your team in the direction that you're going. So when your team members come and they're looking at, this is what's going through designer's mind, this is creative direction, they're not playing catch up to this is what we're doing now. Okay, it's box skirt and crop top. Okay, and then next minute it's maxi boho skirt and flannel shirt or something. Yeah. So they're looking at it every day, and it's painting a picture in their mind as this is the idea, this is what we're going. So they're even able to embody the dream that the creator. So when you're talking about the marketing direction, it's not such a far-fetched concept to them anymore, because they've seen the journey of your thoughts exactly. Yeah. So all of those things, the digital representation of your designs will also help. So imagine, maybe at the office you have a tablet or a screen that just scrolls past the 3D renderings of the designs that you're considering, and everybody's looking at it every day. It does something.
It does something.
It does something.
Definitely, it does. Thank you so much for that. Okay, all right. So the next question I just want to ask now is, if as a fashion enthusiast or a fashion talent who is interested in going the same line or the same path that you are currently on, and I want to do that here in Nigeria, and like you said, there aren't a lot of people, or maybe I should put it this way, formal institutions that currently offer such courses or trainings. How do I go about it?
So I'm going to speak from the perspective of fashion players and business owners that are looking to even bring this talent on board. So first of all, for the players in the industry, there are opportunities out there. There are incubator programs for some of these softwares, because we've not even talked about the softwares, but the softwares are not cheap. It's as anything really in business, there is capital to be spent, right? So the softwares and the devices that can run them are not necessarily cheap, but these are all the things that you would definitely put into your production cost at the end of the day to be able to get your product cost. So from the perspective of the industry player, there are opportunities. Some of these softwares have trial versions that you can use and just check it out. You can also work towards it. Maybe you're currently working with a company that doesn't necessarily do that much, but you want to get into that space. You can save up, and do some work on the trial version and put it out there. You never know, someone can say, oh, I would like to do this, and you're like, okay, first client, this is what I need. Of course, you're not dumping the entire cost on that one client, but you can save towards getting the devices that you need, being able to pay for the subscription that you need, and just grow yourself. I'm sure that the Bridge program of the Obsidian will already have conversations around things like this that you can, and there are always people to network. So you walk into spaces, don't keep quiet. Say hello, what do you do? This is what I do. Okay, I'm a pattern maker. You meet a 3D artist. Okay, how do you do what it is that you do? Even on Instagram, when you're following people that are heading in the direction of where you're going. And so you can, it might be one trick here and there that you see and that you pick up. Oh, I want to try it on my next project or something. And speaking from experience, I'm currently on the incubator program for Browseware. And I mean, the thing is, at the beginning, when a lot of this 3D software started, they were taking a lot of incubator artists because they wanted people to try out the product before they released it. So a lot of them have closed, is essentially what I'm saying. but there will still be more. So I'm on that program, and I wouldn't have found it if I wasn't looking for it, because they're not going to put a
Bring it to
billboard
you.
in Nigeria
I know
that says
they're
bras were
offering
looking for a
this,
hair.
yeah.
So I was looking for
Actively
opportunities
looking,
that I
yeah.
could, I was looking for ways I could download a free version of this because there wasn't really any. Then I found this one. I'm like, okay, I just saw a form, I filled it, and today I'm on the incubator program. I can use the software and be able to practice. Now, Browseware is one that is more technically adapted to the fashion industry, so you must have some pattern knowledge to be able to use it.
That.
As against something like Flow 3D, that is more flexible, so you don't have to be a fashion creative. You don't necessarily have to know how to make patterns or even how to make clothes. It's quite intuitive. There are others also, there's Style 3D, but those are 3D softwares.
Okay.
There are 2D softwares that help you to make your patterns. There's Lectra, there's Style Card. You can also make your patterns on Adobe Illustrator. You just need to have your block on this, but for that you also need to have some basic pattern knowledge to know where to slash, spread, and what features of Adobe Illustrator can help you to achieve the same things. So there's a lot of self-application. You must be hungry. You must be hungry for it. And in that same vein, you should have a portfolio. So that would give you the drive. I'm trying to build my portfolio. I want to be able to put this kind of work out there. This is what I am about. This is the kind of jobs, or this is the kind of company I want to serve. Now that is for the fashion creative.
Okay.
For the business owner, my perspective on running a business is we're not just about to make money. We're trying to build each other up. And if that is your perspective, then you should be forward thinking about even helping to build your staff. Because imagine if your staff has, for example, I have the knowledge of technical design digitally and traditionally. Of course I'm employing it in the company that I'm working with. But if I didn't have it, then I'm just going to be doing the traditional methods only. As a business owner, you should be thinking about how you can build the people that you are working with. Now, I know that there is also the fear of, oh, I will teach them,
and then
they
go,
will go.
The
truth is, people
so
will
much.
always
Yeah,
go.
people always leave.
But if you're building a system, and I mean, if you're building a system that can replicate itself, you have a good succession plan in place. It might look like I'm just talking big, where I'm just saying, oh, you must have. So that means if I'm talking about succession plan, you must have, say, maybe 2 or 3 people on one team. Where is the money to pay them? Okay, as a business owner, your goal should not just be to do only things that the business will benefit from. Your staff can also benefit from it. Because my belief is, if I'm working at your company today, and I eventually move on to other things in my own life, then nothing stops you from reaching out to me later in the day to say, oh, so we're looking for someone who can do this. Would you mind coming on board to train our staff on this? In a well-organized society, let me put that caveat out there. There shouldn't be anything wrong, especially if I have had a good experience working with you. I can always come back and say, oh, okay, this is how this is done, and then I go again.
And leverage on that kind of expertise.
But if I know that my boss is not teaching me how to use Adobe Illustrator because she's so concerned about me learning it and then carrying it and running away, she fill in the blanks. So there's always going to be that part of you being able to pour into the people that you're working with, because the skill gap is there. I mean, if you cannot even buy the software for them, maybe pay for a training for them to attend something, that would benefit them and would benefit your company eventually.
Which brings me to this question, this next question about how fashion business owners, can start, particularly small ones, like ones that are not as established as the others, who don't have a lot of resources or funds to spend on application softwares and things like that. What would you say they should start with? Because I'm someone who is an advocate for building structures from the very beginning. Even no matter how small you are, you can put in structures and systems and then build up on it, because that way it's easy for you to scale up. So what would you say they can start with for digital products creation?
The first thing that comes to mind is the tech pack. But then you would also want to question, oh, but we've been doing collections without tech packs so far. Yes, you have, but the analogy I gave earlier about having visual representations of what you're going for is what the tech pack will help you do. Imagine a world where you can, it's like somebody is trying to, let me use a more conversant analogy. I want a meal prep for the week. And I reach out to a company to say, okay, I want egusi on Monday, I want jollof rice on Tuesday, I want akara on Friday. If that's all I sent to them, which is an example of what we've been doing so far, it is something to work with, right? So I'm just going to myself say, okay, make me a knee-length dress with short sleeves.
Yeah.
That's just the verbal conversation. But when I have a tech pack, it begins to look like this to the food vendor. I want egusi with fish, one fish cut into 5 places, a whole piece of chicken cut into 12. I know, don't salive it. A whole piece of chicken cut into 12 pieces. Yeah. So I'm
in depth.
Yeah. I'm very detailed about what I want in my pot of egusi soup. I want mildly spiced jollof rice with bits of green peas, whatever. I'm more detailed. I want it in 3 liters. I want it in 2 liters, you know, like that. So that's what your tech pack does for you. I want short grain rice. I'm talking about this very, very specific details that will go on the tech pack to say, okay, this is the kind of button that will go on it. This is the kind of zipper that will go on it. This is the amount of yards that I need to be able to make this garment. You know, this is how short the sleeve should be in proportion to the human body. That is what the tech pack will do for you. Now, if you do not have the software, there are freelance sites like Upwork. And if Upwork is so far, we have LinkedIn. There are people on LinkedIn that can do these things. And of course, you always have to have your own vetting system, I should say. There are people on LinkedIn that can make you a tech pack for your business. You basically send them your sketches. And the thing with working with freelancers is you must come correct as a design person. If I'm having a conversation with you and I know that, oh, you can always just tell me what you want and I'll just keep iterating and editing. But if you're talking with a freelancer, the freelancer is telling you, you have 5 designs. If you have 5 designs, you have only 2 iterations. When you're coming to me with the 5 designs, you need to be sure that this is what I want. Exactly. Because if you're changing your mind, it's going to cost you more.
Exactly.
So it will help you to be more disciplined as the business owner or the designer. And so I've mentioned Upwork, I've mentioned LinkedIn. If you do not want to have these softwares yourself, you know, so these are some of the less expensive or less capital intensive. But at the end of the day, you're still going to do some spending that you can also put into your product's price at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So there's a question that I picked up from while you were speaking, you know, and it was when you were talking about your experience and your journey.
Okay.
I know it's a bit direct, but it's more about how are you thinking of ways to empower or educate other people who might be interested in this line?
That's a personal question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, definitely. But you know, as with everyone who wants to do something well, you are not just looking out for the opportunities too, but you're trying to do it in a way that will actually make impact. Because if you have a training session where you're training people how to make, and I keep going back to food analogies because I know everybody loves food.
Yeah.
If you're having a training session where you're teaching people how to make, let's say you're teaching people how to make caviar, who is going to hire them to make caviar at the end of the day? So it's just a whole thought process where you're wondering, if I'm teaching people how to do 3D skills, are there jobs for it? So it's something that I feel like as a whole industry we will need to walk into. It's not a good reason to not teach people anyway. And of course there are already people who are teaching other people. But I guess people have different perspectives to digital fashion. Because some people look at digital fashion as something that they're doing for the metaverse, for cryptocurrency, NFTs. some people look at it as an opportunity to for gaming, because there's digital fashion in gaming. But my perspective with digital fashion is product development. So yes, I am. The short answer to your question is yes, I am, but I do not currently have those trainings going on. But perhaps this is a push in that direction,
for you,
and you will hear from her if and when I do start.
That would be great. So the next question that I have here is about bridging the gap, that currently exists, in terms of the current skill sets and the industry development that we have. It's obvious that the world is going towards a digitalized, what's it called? And then you see that even with in Nigeria, the fashion industry wasn't this way before, where you had what's it called, a delineation of roles, where people had different roles to do.
Everybody
it was just like a
tailor,
tailor,
doing
everything. So back then was a tailor and a business owner who could cut, who could cut freehand, who could sew and all that. But now we're having different skill sets, and of course with the advent of the digital practitioners within the industry too. So how do you think that? I know there are a lot of individuals doing things now on their own, because we have an interesting terrain in Nigeria where people don't get to come together and collaborate effectively, particularly with the government. With what you just shared about your personal goal to do it at some point, do you think that it's something that the Nigerian government should be actively looking towards, bridging that gap between the current skill set that we have and the need to build human capital? I think that's the word that I'm looking for, for the developments that are coming into the industry. Because I personally believe that if we have more stakeholders that are invested in this, it would be cheaper to train someone who is interested in learning how to use 3D and all that. It would be cheaper because it will come at a subsidized rate. And at that point, you're not having people try to gather funds that may not necessarily be available. Imagine if there was someone who had the natural flair for such things, but they could not afford or they can't afford it.
The goal being to provide more affordable ways to educate people, right?
Yes.
I mean, if that is the goal, without any bias, or maybe some bias, I wouldn't look to the government for funding for that. Because I would want to. I mean, we already live in an economy where everybody is their local government chairman. You're providing your electricity, you're providing your water. So even if we want to take the conversation to the government, we need to be sure, maybe not be sure, but have it going good to a very good extent before they would even be the one to say, oh, you're doing this, and we can literally support you on this. So I mean, an example is I took a master class sometime last year where we had two fantastic creatives in the industry in digital fashion. They're Nigerians. They both started sometime around COVID. So one even after COVID, and the masterclass was sponsored by one of these 3D platforms, 3D applications, where at the end of the day, everyone that attended got 6 months free.
Oh wow!
So when I say there is information out there, there is information out there. Just need to find the people that are heading in that direction, and then they'll put up the shows or put up the classes or talks or conferences that you can attend, meet people, hear more things, So all those things are available. In fact, now that you mentioned it, or now that I have mentioned it, there's something working in my head about working with some of these companies. And I mean, this conversation just emphasizes the need for it. And I guess I'm speaking to myself when I say do it nonetheless, and at least you know that you have done the part that you can. So I wouldn't necessarily go the route of waiting for the government to sponsor. We can do it because we do it, and because the masterclass I talked about didn't have anything to do with
With the
government.
government,
Didn't have nothing to do with the government. But when we get to a point where we begin to see, I mean, now we're seeing a lot of our people. I mean, when I say our people, I mean Nigerians in fintech all over the world.
Yeah.
They're being relocated to different parts of the country of the world to be able to employ their skills in
Yeah.
software development and all of that. When we get to the point where we start to hear, okay, there's this fashion designer, and people like, fashion
yeah.
is taking people to the ends of the
I
earth.
know, right?
The government too, like, oh yeah, who wants to do
buy
now?
it? I know.
You know, so
Yeah.
yeah, we need to we're definitely more serious within in the industry. That helps, but we need to do more. And we're not trying to prove to anybody really. I mean, I don't think so. We're trying to prove to the government that okay, we're trying to show you that we are good people who come and see what we're doing, and
It's not a propaganda.
But exactly.
Yeah.
We're doing this because we want to make the change in the industry. Also, we want to be able to sit at the tables, the international tables,
Yeah.
and hold the conversation
Yeah.
and understand what they're talking about, and not
be
okay,
lost.
What are they saying?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's interesting, when you read the data out there about how much the revenue that can come through that is currently coming in through the fashion industry, and the possibilities that exist, you just realize that on the long run it's a smart good for everybody. Exactly.
Honestly, just a smart thing.
Yeah.
We're talking off camera now. We're like, sustainability is no longer a trend. We're getting to a point in the world where if you have a drive towards sustainability and you have shown through your portfolio that you should have,
there has to be proof,
that you are on that tangent, you will have people coming after you from anywhere in the world, anywhere in Africa, coming to say, we want you to implement these sustainable systems in our company. So
it's not a buzzword.
It's not a buzzword anymore. It's not a everybody wants to do something sustainable. We're all making Ankara scrap bag. Fine, but beyond that, there's so much more.
Yeah. That conversation is going to be a very huge one. Because I'm just remembering a conversation I had during the week about sustainable practices and how the Nigerian culture itself is almost as though it's against sustainable practices. You think about the party culture of Ashwebi and all that, and it's a conversation that I don't want us to even be pulled towards. Like, I don't want us to go that direction. But on the long run, like in summary, I just want you to talk about what you think would be the future trends, based on what you can see now. What do you think that what are the changes that you think will be seen in the Nigerian fashion industry with regards to digital product creation and the other things happening generally?
So there's some of them that are already things that the international world is doing, but and I guess this is one of the areas where people are like, digital fashion. Can it really be like, how do I know? Because when you see a 3D simulated garment, you're wondering so what does this tell me about what the end product will be? Those are the concerns that people have for digital fashion. But with the level of technology that has gone in and that is still going in, I was talking off camera with you about actual physical labs when people are generating fabrics to be able to suit certain designs by the creative director. Some of them through sustainable, earth-friendly methods, some of them not. Some methods that we can basically convince people that digital fashion you can use it in the real world is, I was talking with you off camera about the fabric analyzer that you can use to get the grams per square meter, the composition of a garment that would help you determine what kind of fabric you need to make to be able to achieve the design. So, for example, in a lab where they have produced a garment that they've produced a fabric that they need to be able to create a certain type of drape for a design, they can take that composition and send it to whatever fabric manufacturer that they're working with to be able to make the exact same fabric, to produce the garment that they're going for. Also, you have um, marketing. You can use digital fashion in marketing. We have renders right now that are very, very, like, you would see them and you would not
Believe
think
that they're not real.
that they're not real.
Yeah.
And it's not because anyone is trying to be false with you.
Mhm.
It's really is what it would look like in person when you handle the fabric. And I should have mentioned that they have there's a product of the Adobe suite called Adobe Substance Painter that you can use to create the type of texture or consistency of fabric that you want. So when you zoom into a certain fabric, you can see the weave, you can see the warp, the weft, and all of that. You can literally simulate how you want it to look, and that would be what your finished product will be. So you can literally put that on your website to say, okay, this is the close up of what the fabric is supposed to look like. So the customer can determine if this is breathable enough or suitable for what they want to use it for. So there are several other things. We also talked about the tech packs earlier. Those are one of the basic ones. And also in product development, using softwares like Clo 3D and Browseware, you can cut a lot of your sample time and sampling by using the softwares before you get to, because you eventually will still make a physical sample at the end of the day, but instead of being a 10 or maybe 5, you're probably going to make like 2 or 3 at the end of the day.
Okay, great. All right, so a last question for you, just on a lighter note, and it's a play of words, so garment talks. So if a garment could talk based on what you do in the industry, what would a garment say?
Oh, okay, that's a very interesting perspective. I think the government will say, please make up your mind what you're doing with me before you touch me. I think it would say, I am of value to, don't waste me. Yeah, I want to be actually worn. I don't want to hang in someone's closet for the longest time. I want people to be proud of me when they're wearing me. And that helps when you have put good thoughts into making me. Yeah.
Thank you
that's
so
what the
much
government
for
would
that.
say.
Yeah, that's a great one. I remember that in one of my classes, like way back then, I would say to students that there's a way to caress your fabric, even when you're sewing it. It was a garment construction class, there's a way you handle fabric when you're sewing it such that you can maintain the fluidity of the fabric or the kind of texture that it has.
Fabric doesn't feel abused.
Exactly, and then at the end of the day,
So you even
it would
carry your
respond,
design well.
it would respond to you.
I know.
When you've shown it so much love, there's a way to actually treat fabric when you're sewing it. And with that, we've come to the end of today's episode of Garment Talks. So whether you are a fashion entrepreneur, garment production lead, Garment Talks is your go-to resource for practical conversations that help you bridge creativity with manufacturing excellence. So please subscribe, like, comment, and also let me know the possible conversations you would like for us to have on Garment Talks. See you on the next episode. My name is Moreni Keji Edward Etu, your host. Bye for now.